Do you consider yourself to be an immigrant of the United States of America?
I never really thought of the term immigrant. For me, I just was a person living, studying, working in the United States, but I think technically I am an immigrant. I've lived longer in the States than I have lived in Germany or Europe, so I guess technically I'm an immigrant, but I don't think of myself as such.
Where were you born and where do you live now?
I was born in Germany in a small town just south of Munich in Bavaria. Right now I live in Omaha, in Dundee, in Nebraska.
When did you come over?
In 1990, and I was initially coming over for an exchange here, just after I was done studying in Germany to get experience, and then my intention was to come back and start a job in Germany.
Did you visit USA before you came over?
Yes, actually I went on a tour, I think it was 23, so quite a few years ago, quite a few decades. And I went on a bus tour from San Francisco all the way to Miami, so that was my first exposure to the States.
And what was your first impression?
Great, it's like, wow, this is like in the movies, you know, driving down the highways and those big signs for restaurants and all the lights. It was pretty amazing.
Did that visit change your vision about your life? Do you wanted to come back and stay in the United States?
Not after that visit, but when I was at the university in Germany, one of my friends did an exchange year in Minneapolis, and she was really excited. She enjoyed it so much and said, oh, you gotta do this. And that's really what made me decide to do the same thing, except after I was done studying.
So you came over as an exchange student.
Yeah.
What kept you here?
Well, I really enjoyed how the university system is running here. In Germany at that time, it was very much theoretical. And here the program was very much applied, so very much focused on the industry that you're working in. And I just thought, wow, why don't I stay and get my master's degree? And that really set everything in motion.
And you did, right?
I did, yeah.
And what is your field of study or your industry?
I got a degree in food science, so I've been working in the food industry for the last 26 years.
So you're a food scientist?
A food scientist.
Where do you work now?
I work for Conagra Brands in downtown Omaha.
What was the hardest thing to adjust to when you decided to stay in the United States?
I think just not seeing my friends and my family was really hard to get used to. Other than that, I think just the vastness of the country and the fact that you basically have to have a car to get around because the public transportation is not very well built out here. That was a big difference to what I was used to from Germany. But otherwise, the adjustments weren't really that difficult.
And the food? Did you see any difference in the quality of food here compared to the European food? Since you are a food scientist.
I do, and I did see a difference in food, obviously, and the freshman 15, they are not a myth. They actually almost happened to me too. I think the food was, first of all, I was really amazed about the quantities of food that we get here. And a lot of it is fried, is sometimes on a stick, but because in Germany, we have McDonald's and Burger King, some of these fast food restaurants. It wasn't that much of a culture shock. The portions are huge. I think that is something I'm still trying to grapple with.
When you came over, how was your English?
So I took English since 5th grade in Germany. I dropped it, I think it was 10th grade, and continued with French, but I had a fairly decent knowledge of English, but it was still an adjustment because what we learned was British English, and I found myself formulating the perfect sentence in my head before I was actually saying something. But I remember one of my friends saying, just talk. That's the best way. And that's true. I think my English was good, but I was by no means fluent. That just came with time.
Are there still words that are difficult for you to say in English?
I'm sure there are. I mean, but it's the same in German. There are words that I'm not really familiar with. I think squirrel, that's a really tough word.
Which language do you feel that you're more fluent now? Have you lost a little bit of German?
I think I do have some deficiency in German now. Sometimes my syntax is English or American, and some of my friends comment on that. It's easier for me to be strict with my kids in English, and certainly anything that's work related. I've learned most of it here in the States, so it's very difficult to converse with somebody in the food industry in German because I've learned everything here.
Right. And speaking of your kids, do they know how to speak German? They were born here?
Yes, they were both born here, and I neglected to bring them up bilingual. They both learned or are learning German in high school. And if they wanted to, I think they could be pretty good, but they have to overcome this barrier to speak.
Is your family still in Germany?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the kids have visited many times.
Are you a citizen of the United States?
I'm not. I'm a legal resident.
And for how many years have you been in that status?
Since '97.
Why this choice?
Well, I was first here on a student visa, and it really never occurred to me to apply for citizenship in the beginning, just because I'm emotionally still very much attached to, if not Germany, at least Europe. And I felt like I was giving up something, or I would give up something of myself if I take up the American citizenship, because I don't think Germany allows dual citizenship. So denouncing German citizenship, that was just out of the question for me. It's very emotional for me, and I did not see many advantages of becoming a citizen, other, of course, than I would be able to vote. Over the years, the idea of becoming a citizen was getting a little bit easier, or I was actually seriously thinking about it, but over the last years, I really didn't feel like it was necessary, or I didn't feel it would be advantageous for me to say I am an American citizenship. I'm an American citizen, given everything that's going on right now.
What do you mean by that?
Giving
everything that's going on.
Well,
right now.
I'm just thinking the political environment that we've been in for the last 4 or 5 years.
And is the position of the United States versus the world community that made you think that way, or?
More or less. Yeah, that's really one of the reasons. I thought, no, I don't think I want to become an American citizen at this point.
Okay. But are you open to consider it in the future?
I'm always going back and forth.
Now, have you ever felt unsafe because of your choice? Do people ask you about your legal status?
Hardly ever. That hardly ever comes up in conversations. Sometimes, especially around the presidential election years, it comes up, and most of the time people are surprised to hear that I'm not a citizen, because they just assume that I am, given that I've lived here for more than 30 years. But unsafe? No, I've never felt unsafe.
If it hardly was brought up to you, that means that they were never really offended by your choice?
No, not to my knowledge. Maybe not overtly. I'm not sure if people, after they heard that I'm not a citizen, thinking, she should, or would think, why wouldn't she, and look down on me. But nobody has ever let me know this. The only thing that I remember, or the only situation I remember being a little bit, not strange, but the question coming up was not the last time I renewed my green card, but the time before, when the officer at the INS asked me, well, wouldn't it be easier for you just to become a citizen, then you wouldn't have to renew your green card? And I think that was one of the times when I actually seriously considered it, and I printed out the application forms and said, wow, this is quite intensive what you have to go through.
If Germany would allow dual citizenship, would you have applied for the American citizenship?
I think that would have made it easier.
Okay.
Definitely.
The green card, you said that you renew it periodically. What is the term there? Is it 10 years or?
It's 10 years.
10 years, right?
I just renewed it
okay.
last year.
Is the fee affordable for the green card?
Yeah, it is affordable. I mean, it's expensive, and in the long run, it's probably cheaper to become a citizen. A friend of mine, a colleague, he compared it to having he said it's cheaper than a membership in a gym, if you think about it.
The citizenship.
Yeah, the citizenship.
And I would like to go back to your roots. How much of Germany you preserve in your everyday life here in America? Or do you preserve it at all?
I try to, and it's getting harder and harder the longer I've lived here, because there are a lot of American traditions traditions that I embrace. But Christmas, for example, in Germany we don't put up the Christmas tree until the 23rd. And I've resisted to put a Christmas tree up right after Thanksgiving for the longest time, until I realized if I wait until the middle of December, or even, I mean, really close to Christmas, there are no Christmas trees left. But I push it out as far as I can, and I would normally leave it up until the 6th of January. I still preserve those Christmas cookie traditions, recipes that I was handed out from my mom. For a while I had St. Nicolaus, which is the night of December 5th through December 6th, when children in Germany put their boots out in front of their doors, their room, and then St. Nicolaus comes and puts goodies in them. So when my kids were small, I still did that.
And your kids are teenagers now, or?
One is 17 and the other one is 23.
If someone asks you in terms of your nationality, how would you define yourself? American German or German American?
That's a tough one. I would say German European with a huge affinity for America. Because this is my home. I've built a really great life here, and if for some reason, let's say I was never allowed to come back to the United States again, that would be heartbreaking for me, just as much as it would be heartbreaking never to be able to go back to Germany. So I was born in Germany, but I mean, I've traveled all over Europe, and especially after moving to the United States, the rich culture of Europe is very dear to me, and that is important. That is something I cherish, so I don't just want to limit myself to Germany.
Okay.
Because Europe as a whole is very important for me. Europe as a whole is what influenced me and formed me in a way.
And you were born in West Germany?
Yes.
Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So you witnessed the fall of the wall?
I did. It was just before I came over here. Actually, the first official Reunification celebration was my first year in the States. But yeah, I was 89 when the Berlin Wall came down, and I remember my mom saying she never thought she would see that in her lifetime.
What was the feeling?
It was amazing. I'm not sure that I grasped the real meaning and the importance back then, but I realized how much energy and hope we had, and it was really good. It was a coming together and a sense of building something, making something whole again that was divided for so many years.
If you meet someone who was born in East Germany, do you connect to that person as German, or there's still a division of West and East?
Oh, no. Now, of course, it's completely, I wouldn't consider them East German or West German. And I met actually when I was studying at the University of Minnesota a young woman. She was from formerly East Germany, but that again didn't really become an issue. On the other hand, I traveled a couple of times to East Germany or to East Berlin because my mom had a friend who lived there and still lives in Berlin now. And there you could feel a total division and a kind of a sense of suspicion on both sides. I felt like the people in East Germany felt like they had to show that they weren't the second-class citizen or a second-class country, and that was slightly uncomfortable to me.
Yeah. I sense that this is more in the way people thought about each other, but visually, Berlin, was it different? East Berlin and West Berlin? Could you tell?
Yes.
Could you tell the difference?
Yes, back then, yes, absolutely. The architecture very different, more stark, I would say, a little bit
grayish.
Yeah, I was just gonna say drained of color. But maybe it's because I went there with my school class. It was February and it was gray and it was cold and it was miserable overall. But I also remember a visit in June when we went to some of the lakes in East Germany, and it was beautiful. But it's definitely a little bit less vibrant.
So basically, it didn't take much for the German nation to reunite.
I think it did take quite a bit.
You do think so?
Mm-hmm, because still the mindset is different was different in East Germany versus West Germany, and a lot of people really embraced what East Germany stood for. And there were a lot of things that they had to give up after the reunification. I just have to think of childcare for working moms. I mean, being a working mom was almost a given in East Germany. And there were systems in place, childcare options, and after the reunification, I think that was a pretty harsh awakening that maybe the West German support system wasn't as good. Sure, there were now more options, but more options also mean more confusion and more, almost a state of being overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. You still go to Germany very often, is that right? Do you travel to Germany?
Once a year.
Once a year, and visit family there, right?
Family and friends.
And friends. The ties are still strong?
Very strong.
Do you contemplate going back to Germany one day, returning to Germany one day?
I actually do, and it's really tough for me to make that decision, and I'll tell you why. It's because if my kids decide to have a family, if I move back to Germany, if let's say I retire in Germany, then how often would I see them? How often would I see grandkids, if there are any? Because my mom and my dad, they haven't had a chance to really form a relationship with their grandkids, with my children. But just what you said just now, you still have strong bonds. Yes, I still have very strong bonds in Germany, and I think it's probably because in Germany I was very much centered around my hometown. I went away to study, yes, but all my friends and my mom and dad, they still live in that area.
A small town downtown, yeah.
Whereas here I've moved 3 times, I lived in 3 different cities. Within each city I maybe moved once or twice. So even though I have friends here, they're scattered, and once I moved from one city to the other, maybe the connection to those friends didn't continue. So that makes my connection to Germany still pretty strong.
Do you feel you have rooted in the United States nowadays?
I do. I mean, just because I have a family here and because I built a really, really good life.
Yeah.
a very full life, and America, the United States, the people I've met, they've been very good to me. So I've been very lucky, and that is difficult to not form a bond or at least put down some roots, even though I moved a couple of times.
How has technology reduced or helped you address that emotional gap that you feel when you relocate to a different country?
Well, so my parents are very technology averse. And so no smartphones, no laptops. We talk on the phone, yeah. But I try to convince them to please at least get a smartphone so I can send you pictures all the time, but nope, they won't do it. But with my friends, yes, it has helped. I remember in the beginning we would write letters, real letters, which was beautiful too, but now with WhatsApp and everything, it's beautiful to just pick up the phone and you can FaceTime with your best friend and you say, here, look, this is my house, this is where I live, I can take you on a walk now.
Yeah.
So that has helped.
Yeah. Let's say you are back in Germany and one of your good friends asks you, how would you describe your experience in America? What would your answer be?
I would say that I've had a really, really good experience in the States. I felt welcomed, I felt accepted, I have been given opportunities that maybe I would have had in Germany as well, but they certainly helped me feel very much at home here. And one thing that I cherish the most is how many people from different cultures and backgrounds I met here. At the university, at work, I'm not sure that I would have had that opportunity in Germany, because Germany, when I left, was still fairly homogeneous. I think that has changed now too, but this appreciation for different cultures and the ease with which I can communicate back and forth or just interact, I found that the best experience.
So it was a good decision.
Yes, it was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life.